This city should not exist. It is a dream, rendered in marble. A floating mirage of palaces and basilicas balanced on the shimmering surface of the Adriatic. It is Venice. For centuries, we have been told its creation was an accident. A miracle born of desperation. In the 5th century, as the Roman Empire crumbled and barbarian hordes swept across Italy, terrified refugees fled their mainland homes. They sought sanctuary in the most hostile, uninhabitable place they could find. A treacherous, waterlogged swamp. These refugees, we are told, were simple fishermen, monks, and farmers. And through sheer grit and divine providence, they accomplished the impossible. They built a city of stone, on shifting silt where even trees refuse to grow. It is a beautiful story, but it is a lie, or, at the very least, it is a comfortable narrative designed to hide a profound and perhaps unsettling truth. Because when you drain the canals, when you look beneath the beauty, the evidence does not point to an accident. It points to a plan. The secret of Venice is not how they built it. The secret is what they knew. This was not an act of survival. It was the precise execution of an ancient, impossible blueprint. And the knowledge they used should have been lost to the Dark Ages forever. To understand the lie, we must first understand the legend. The stage is the 5th and 6th centuries AD. The world is ending. The infrastructure, knowledge, and order of the Roman Empire, the greatest civilization the West had ever known, is being extinguished. City by city, the inhabitants of mainland cities like Padua, Aquileia, and Altinum are faced with an impossible choice. Stay and die, or flee into the unknown. They chose the lagoon. We see this place today as a tourist paradise. But the early settlers found a nightmare. It was not a single island, but a scattering of 118 small, marshy islets. The ground was nothing but saturated mud and silt. The original chroniclers are clear. If you stepped onto these islands, you would sink to about your waist. It was a place of disease, isolation, and biting salt winds. The official story says the first Venetians lived like water nomads. They built crude stilt huts, moving from one muddy patch to another. They survived on fish and salt, harvesting salt from the water and trading it for essentials. Salt, once as precious as gold, was their first currency. For centuries, this was their existence. Then, as the official story goes, they learned. They evolved. They began to drive wooden stakes into the mud, not just for huts, but for foundations. They laid wooden platforms over these stakes, and on top of that, they placed stone. Simple, light, Istrian stone. And from this simple, desperate improvisation, a city was born. From this mud, a maritime empire that would one day control 3,000 ships and dominate the Mediterranean, somehow emerged. It's a wonderful story. Bravery, ingenuity, the human spirit, but it completely falls apart the moment you ask one simple, scientific question. Why didn't the wood rot? Think about it. You drive millions of wooden stakes, dead trees into wet, salty mud. What happens? Every builder, every farmer, every person in the 5th century knew the answer. It rots. Bacteria, fungi, and marine organisms would feast on the cellulose. In a matter of years, certainly decades, the entire foundation of the city should have turned to mush. The marble palaces should have collapsed into the lagoon before they were even finished. But they didn't. The official story brushes this aside. It says the Venetians discovered a trick. They learned that if the wood was constantly submerged and sealed off from oxygen, it didn't rot. This is where the comfortable story ends, and where our investigation truly begins. Because what they discovered was not a simple trick. It was a highly specific, multidisciplinary body of knowledge. knowledge of chemistry, geology, and microbiology that these simple refugees had no business possessing. To build Venice, you needed to solve 3 impossible problems. Problem 1. You must stop 10 million wooden piles from rotting. Problem 2. You must find a building stone that will not crumble in salt-filled air. Problem 3. You must organize an industrial-scale logging and logistics operation, while you are supposedly a stateless refugee. The official narrative claims they solved this through luck and trial and error. The evidence claims otherwise. The Coranto mystery. The Venetian builders didn't just drive piles into the mud. They were meticulous. They drove their piles through the soft, unstable upper layers, hammering them down until they hit a very specific, deeper layer. A layer of dense, blue-gray compressed clay. They called it Coranto. This was not a random choice. This was the entire secret. Coranto is a Pleistocene-era clay, compressed by the weight of ancient glaciers. Its key property? It is almost completely anaerobic. It is sterile, devoid of oxygen. Anywhere else in the lagoon, the wood would rot. But driven into the Coranto, the microorganisms, the fungi, the bacteria that cause decay, are instantly suffocated and killed. How? Did 5th century refugees know this? How did they identify this specific, invisible geological stratum? How did they understand the principles of anaerobic microbiology, a science we wouldn't formally develop for another 1,300 years? But the impossible knowledge goes even deeper. The Venetians knew that the wood, sealed in this anoxic tomb, would not just be preserved. They knew that over time, the constant flow of mineral-rich water through the Coranto layer would change the wood itself. The wood fibers would slowly absorb these minerals. The wood would petrify. They didn't just stop the rot. They initiated a chemical process to turn wood into stone. They weren't just building a foundation. They were manufacturing a new, hybrid geological material. A material that would last for millennia. This is not survival. This is not luck. This is advanced, predictive chemistry and geology. This brings us to problem 2, the Istrian stone paradox. Let's say you've solved the foundation. Now you must build. You are surrounded by salty air and saltwater floods. There is a chemical process called haloclasty. Salt water seeps into the microscopic pores of stone. The water evaporates, leaving salt crystals. These crystals grow and pry the stone apart from the inside. It's a relentless, destructive force that turns most stone, even marble, into powder. The Venetians needed a stone that was immune. Did they use local stone? No. Did they use the famous marbles from nearby Verona? No. They would have crumbled. Instead, they sourced almost all their foundational stone from one specific place: Istria, in modern-day Croatia. Why? The original transcript says it's so tough it doesn't crumble in salty air, but the reason is scientific genius. Istrian stone is a unique, non-porous limestone. It is a microcrystalline structure. Its pores are so infinitesimally small that the salt crystals cannot form inside them. Salt water washes over it, but cannot get in. It is, for all practical purposes, waterproof and saltproof. So, let's review. Our simple fishermen understood anaerobic microbiology to find the Coranto layer. They understood predictive chemistry to mineralize their foundations, and they understood the science of microcrystalline structures and haloclasty to select the one stone on Earth from hundreds of miles away that would not turn to dust. This is the fracture point. The story no longer holds. Microbiology. Advanced material science. Does that sound like desperate refugees to you? And we haven't even touched on problem 3, the industrial machine. Over 10 million wooden piles. Stop and comprehend that number. 10 million trees. These were not saplings. These were mature trunks of oak, alder, and larch, 10 to 25 centimeters in diameter, driven 9 piles per square meter. Where did they come from? Entire forests were sacrificed. They were logged and shipped from the mountains of Slovenia and Croatia, hundreds of miles away. This wasn't a village project. This was a state-level, industrial operation. It required complex supply chains. It required thousands of workers. It required surveyors, engineers, and quartermasters. It required a centralized, unified plan and the capital to fund it before Venice was a rich republic. The official story wants you to believe that a scattered, terrified, and disorganized group of refugees simultaneously mastered 3 different fields of advanced science and organized one of the largest engineering projects of the Dark Ages. The claim is not just unlikely, it is absurd. The evidence is clear. The builders of Venice were not simple, and they were not desperate. They were prepared. They arrived in that lagoon with a plan. So, we must ask the question the official history refuses to answer. If they were not simple refugees, who were they? This leads us to the heretical narrative, the 0-point hypothesis. What if the founders of Venice were not just any refugees? What if the fall of Rome was not just a collapse, but a migration of its knowledge? We are taught that this knowledge of concrete, of advanced engineering, of sanitation was lost, burned by barbarians, plunging Europe into 1,000 years of darkness. But knowledge is not just stored in books, it is stored in people. The heretical theory is this: Venice was a deliberate project, a new home, founded in secret by the inheritors of this lost knowledge, the intellectual and technical elite of the fallen empire. They did not flee to the lagoon by accident. They chose it. They chose it precisely because it was an uninhabitable fortress, a natural moat that would protect them and their precious knowledge from the barbarian world that had descended into chaos. The lagoon was not a prison. It was a laboratory. Here, in this isolated testing ground, they could deploy the knowledge they had preserved. They knew about the Coranto clay. They knew about salt-proof stone. They knew how to organize a mass-scale project. This wasn't an improvisation. It was the continuation of Roman, or perhaps even older, engineering genius. Venice is not a medieval city. It is the last and most successful Roman city ever built. The proof is everywhere. Look at the city's wells. The transcript calls them simple, yet so smart, using sand and clay to filter rainwater. These are not simple. They are ingenious, multi-stage filtration systems, identical in principle to the most advanced Roman cisterns. While the rest of Europe was dying from contaminated water, Venice had a citywide public utility providing clean, filtered drinking water. But the final, definitive proof, the smoking gun, was found only recently. In 2020, underwater archaeologists mapping the lagoon floor found something. Beneath the water, buried under centuries of silt, was a road, remnants of a Roman road, dating from before the 5th century refugee crisis. The official story is that no one lived in the lagoon. It was empty. But this proves the Romans were already there. They were mapping it. They were building in it. They knew about this location. The founders of Venice didn't stumble upon an unknown swamp. They returned to a pre-selected, pre-scouted location, armed with a complete technical manual for how to build the impossible. For 1,000 years, this preserved knowledge built an empire. The Venetians used their mastery of nature to live in harmony with it. They built a city that breathes with the tides. They understood the ecosystem. They used its own chemistry to forge an eternal foundation. And for 1,000 years, it worked. Then, we, the moderns, arrived. And we have proven that we have learned nothing. Today, Venice is in mortal danger, not from barbarians, but from us. Mass tourism, cruise ships, pollution, and climate change are its new invaders. The city is sinking 1 to 2 millimeters per year. At the same time, global sea levels are rising. The acqua alta, the high tides, are becoming more frequent, more violent. The city is drowning. The ancient founders solved their water problem with elegance. Our modern solution? The Mose Project. Inaugurated in 2003. Expensive, controversial, and plagued by corruption. The ancient builders used knowledge. They used finesse. They used chemistry and geology. We are using brute force. We are attempting to build a wall of steel to hold back the entire Adriatic Sea. It is a clumsy, arrogant, and ultimately fragile solution to a problem the original builders solved a millennium and a half ago. We look at Venice as a museum, a postcard, a place to sip espresso by a canal. We have forgotten that it is a textbook. It is a monument to a body of knowledge, a zero-point lore that we have tragically lost. We have more technology, but less wisdom. The founders of Venice proved that humans, armed with the right knowledge, can live in harmony with the most hostile environment on Earth. We, in our ignorance, are proving that we can destroy that harmony, even as we claim to be saving it. The history we are taught is full of these comfortable stories, but the evidence, hidden just beneath the surface, often tells a different tale. If you believe that our past holds the keys to our future, if you want to investigate the lost science and forgotten blueprints of our ancestors, then subscribe to Zero Point Lore. We are the channel that asks, what if the myths are the manuals? The next time you see a picture of Venice, do not see a fragile city slowly sinking into the sea. See it for what it truly is, a 1,500-year-old paradox, a prehistoric forest, petrified into stone, holding up marble palaces, a myth that somehow came true. It is a testament to a lost science and a warning. It forces us to ask the most important question of all. What else have we forgotten? So what is your theory? Was Venice a 1 in a billion miracle of desperate survival? Or was it the greatest, most successful, and most secret engineering project of the Dark Ages? Let us know your theory in the comments below.